Coming up next on Arizona Horizon, a visit by two members of Arizona's congressional delegation. We'll hear from Democratic lawmakers Kyrsten Sinema and Ruben Gallego. Plus, we'll take you to a lab specializing in helping kids with sports injuries. That's next on Arizona Horizon.
Arizona Horizon is made possible by contributions from the Friends of Arizona PBS, members of your PBS station. Thank you.
Good evening and welcome to Arizona Horizon. I'm Ted Simons. The Arizona Supreme Court today agreed to review a finding that former Attorney General Tom Horne violated campaign finance laws. The High Court's decision gives Horne and his former aide Kathleen Wynne one last chance to overturn a ruling that Horne had to repay $400,000 to donors and possibly $1.2 million in fines for illegally coordinating with an outside group backing his run for Attorney General. Both Horne and Wynne say that they did nothing illegal. Democratic Congresswoman Kyrsten Sinema won her third term in the U.S. House of Representatives this year, serving Arizona's District 9. Representative Sinema joins us now to talk about what's shaping up to be an eventful time on Capitol Hill. Welcome back. Good to see you.
It's great to be back with you.
Set to begin your third term. Are you feeling more comfortable about all this? What are you thinking? How are you feeling out there?
Well, you should never feel comfortable because that's how you lose. But I am really delighted to go back and continue serving. You know, the first couple months are always very rocky, but I found my groove pretty easily, and it's been a wonderful experience the last 4 years, and I'm really looking forward to 2 more.
Now let's talk about finding your groove. You addressed incoming freshmen this past month. You were, not too long ago, that was you. You addressed them. What'd you tell them?
Well, I gave them a couple pieces of advice. The first piece of advice I said is not to take yourself too seriously, because no one even knows you or likes you, right? I mean, you're brand new, and there's a million people around. The second thing I told them was to do one of the smartest things you can do in political life, which is to make friends, real authentic relationships with people on both sides of the aisle, so that you have the relationships you need when you want to get something passed for your constituents back home. And the most important piece of advice I gave them is don't eat and drink at every event you go to. Because that freshman 15, it's not going away like it did in college.
Yeah, it's a real thing, isn't it?
That's right.
Are these things you wish you had been told as a freshman, or were you told these kinds of things? I mean, sometimes those things can be awful boring.
You know, no one really told me those things, but the good thing that I had going into this was a lot of experience in the state legislature. So I made all of my mistakes as a freshman in the state house back in 2005. And what I wanted to do was to help these new incoming lawmakers not make some of those same mistakes that I and others have made.
Okay, let's get down to some other issues here. You opposed Nancy Pelosi as minority leader. Why?
You know, for the last 8 years, Democrats have really struggled in House elections. We're not doing a great job at winning the tough seats across the country. Frankly, Ted, seats like the one that I hold right here in Arizona. And it seems to me that if you want to do something differently, you need a new strategy and a new approach. And unfortunately, our caucus decided earlier this year to just double down on the same approach and strategy that they've used for the last 8 years. That doesn't make any sense to me.
What is that approach and strategy, and why is it wrong?
Well, what I've heard from our leadership is that their strategy is to just wait until Republicans on the other side of the aisle make big mistakes, and then the country will come back to us. I just don't think that's right. I also don't think that you fulfill your destiny by waiting for other people to act. I believe in an internal locus of control where you make your own decisions. So if you want people to vote for you or support you, you've got to go make the case of why they should and ask them for their support. But more importantly, listen to them and find out what they want.
Success, though, what is a successful Democratic strategy in an era of Donald Trump?
You know, I think there are a lot of things that our party could do differently. And frankly, these are the kind of things that I've been trying to do in my own life in the service in my district. And that's to listen to people who are different than yourselves. You know, one of the things that we saw this year was that Democrats did really well around the edges of the country and really suffered in the heartland of America. And really struggled in places, even right here in Arizona. We've got Democrats and Republicans who live and work next to each other every day. I think Democrats need to do a better job of listening to the folks across America about why they're upset, why they feel left behind. You know, lots of people have said government's not serving them, and they're angry. Instead of telling them what we're going to do, why don't we take some time to ask people what they want?
And yet critics will say, and many Democrats will say, it's all fine and dandy to say you will work with the Republican Party, but the Republican Party, they say, doesn't work with Democrats.
Well, I'll work with anyone to get things done. You remember that even from my time in the state legislature. In fact, I remember one time being criticized for something I said on this very show about my ability to work with someone even as far out to the right as Russell Pierce. If I could manage to work with Russell Pierce, I can manage to work with anyone in Congress.
So can Democrats be relevant in a Trump presidency?
I absolutely think that we can. And I think it is up to us as individual members to choose how we'll represent our constituency and represent the people that we serve in a way that reflects their interests. And I feel confident in my ability to reach across the aisle and get things done regardless of who's in charge of our administration.
Did you prefer Tim Ryan over Nancy Pelosi?
I voted for Tim Ryan.
Okay, was it anyone other than Pelosi? Was that the idea, or did Ryan have something that you thought was special?
You know, Ryan he's a great guy. He comes from Ohio. He carried a district that Donald Trump won. So in his district, voters chose Donald Trump, but also chose him, which means that he had an ability to break through that Democratic messaging that wasn't working in parts of the country that resonated with his constituents. He knows how to listen to folks in the Rust Belt, to folks who feel left behind by this government. He's a good man, and I thought he was a good person to run for that office.
Obviously, that's one of those districts that you mentioned earlier that were toss-ups, similar to yours, as you mentioned earlier. Critics of you, though, say you're a little too independent, that in times of
no such thing, Ted.
In times when you have a Republican Party that will simply block everything that the president and Democrats try to do, they need everyone, Democrats say, everyone on their ship, and sometimes you weren't there. How do you respond to that?
Well, I think being independent is one of my greatest strengths. It's something that my parents taught me when I was very young, to think for myself, and it's something that I've really prided myself on my whole life. I also think, Ted, that that's one of the reasons I continued to get elected in our district, because I approach this work not from a partisan perspective, but from a perspective of serving my constituents and standing up for what I believe is right. And I'll do that regardless of what any party is doing.
Even if the party says we need everyone on board for X, Y, and Z, and you're thinking maybe X but not Y or Z.
Well, I don't work for the party. I work for the constituents of District 9.
Okay, and the party says we can't get it done without you, Kirsten. You're going to say...
I have one boss, constituents of District 9.
CIA says Russia has tried to influence the election. What are your thoughts on that?
I'm very concerned about this report. Now, this is not a new report. We were hearing stories about intelligence concerns before the election about Russian interference. You may recall that one of the Russian hacks that happened on WikiLeaks included my personal information. So my data was out there, as were many, many other members of Congress, my staff, people on my team. So this is real. This happened. And I think it's important that we're having a bipartisan investigation. So I commend Senator McConnell and members of both parties who asked Senator McConnell for an investigation into this. It's not about Democrat or Republican. It's about the integrity of American elections and our entire electoral system.
Do you think the Electoral College, members of the Electoral College, should vote as their citizens in their states voted, or should they vote their conscience? Should they vote against a Donald Trump, despite the fact Trump won that state?
Well, as you know, different states have different rules for their electors, but I do believe that when you sign up to be an elector, you know what you're agreeing to do, and you should uphold whatever agreement it is that you've made in your state to follow the rules of that community.
Even though the Electoral College was set up in case of someone winning the presidency that many in the Electoral College don't think is qualified.
Donald Trump won the Electoral College. There was an election.
There was an election, and he did win. What does that say about America?
Well, I think what we saw this year, and this is something I actually have been talking about for the whole year, was that this year was an unusual year. Many Americans were what I call middle finger voters, right? This is the year of the middle finger voter. People were upset and angry. They felt left behind. They feel like government's not serving them. All of that is valid and true because Washington is broken and people are not being served by their government.
Why is Washington broken, though? Who do you point the finger? Whatever finger you want. Who do you point to?
Well, I think a large reason that Washington's broken is because Congress has decided to fight like children instead of work together to get things done. And so we're all responsible for this, voters and those of us who hold elected office, which is why I focused so much on being an independent voice and not being a partisan individual. I think that's what America is interested in. So this year we saw candidates like Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump who just didn't play the by the rules, who didn't follow the party line. And they both garnered unusual support from parts of the country that had previously felt like they weren't being spoken to or helped or supported. What I think is the real challenge for us, regardless of partisanship, whether you're Republican or Democrat, our real challenge now is to go listen to those folks across the country who said, yeah, I'm a middle finger voter. I want to know why folks are upset and what can I do to help solve their concerns.
What if they tell you what upsets them, and what upsets them is part of something you believe, you think is right for the country, and they say, I don't think that's right for the country. I would rather have abortion restrictions or other things that you may not agree to. What happens then?
That's every day of my life, Ted. Because I represent a district that's almost evenly divided between Democrats, independents, and Republicans, there are always disagreements. What I strive for is understanding. I want people to know that I'm listening, that I'm trying to be careful to represent their viewpoints, but I do understand there will be times where we will disagree. My hope is that when a constituent and I disagree, we can do so respectfully, and we can do so with mutual respect to each other. I think that's the best we can ask for.
All right, and that's all we can ask you. Congresswoman, good to have you here. Thanks for
so
joining
much.
us. We appreciate it. Democrat Ruben Gallego was reelected last month to Congress, representing Congressional District 7. Here now to talk about his plans for the upcoming session is Representative Gallego. Good to see you again.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for coming on in. Set to begin your second term. Compare you, your surroundings, your thoughts to the first term.
Well, it's a different world. We have a Donald Trump presidency coming up. Obviously, would have been better to have been under a Secretary Clinton presidency. My first term, I had always President Obama as a backstop to stop the craziness of the radical Republican agenda, and now we're going to have to be reliant on the Democrats in Congress and the Senate to really stop what could be some really horrible next 4 years.
That has to be the biggest adjustment, I would imagine.
Absolutely.
Deal making on Capitol Hill. I wanted to talk more about some of our lawmakers about this. Some folks find it just repugnant, and others say this is the only way to get things done. Your thought about deal making?
Well, I think it's a tool, and sometimes you have to cut deals. And when it's appropriate for your constituents, absolutely look for the deal and make sure that you're doing it from a position, I would say, of authority, and you're not really selling out the the ideals, I think, of what people that sent you to Congress. And sometimes you have to leverage, and that means in instances like this, when we are in the minority, deal making is not the end-all be-all. It's actually using leverage and trying to find a way to stop bad things or to mitigate really bad things from happening.
I would imagine deal making will take on a whole new definition here in the next session.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Why did the Democrats lose the White House, and why so few gains in the House?
Well, for many reasons why. For us to deny that FBI Comey's last-minute intervention did not have an effect, especially considering that it was a 55,000 vote difference between Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin, I think would be extremely naive. That really did cost us. Number two, I think Donald Trump ran a xenophobic campaign that drew out some of the worst people in the world that we are just not going to appeal to, and we're never going to. And lastly, I think at the end of the day, there was a very organized effort that had been going on for many years to really smear Secretary Clinton and make it more difficult for her to win. And let's not forget all the voting restrictions that have been implemented in many of the states that made it difficult for many people to vote. And all that combined and gets you to this situation.
I was going to say all those things combined get the situation, but
Right.
all those things individually, none of them address what some people say is folks who aren't xenophobic, who aren't radical this and who understood this and who had no voting suppression as far as they just thought a change was needed.
Well, they're going to get a change. It's a change for the worse. If they think that Donald Trump is bringing change, they'll get it, but it's going to be probably the worst that we've ever seen in this country. Medicare is on lifeline. Social Security is radically about to be changed. The EPA is no longer going to actually protect the environment. Changes are coming, and it's going to be horrible.
Do you think people realize that these changes could possibly happen?
I think some people don't realize this, but this is reality now, and I'm going to do everything to protect them, even those that were dumb enough to vote for Donald Trump. But I think in reality, they don't know the real pain that Donald Trump is going to bring to this country.
You opposed Nancy Pelosi as minority leader. Why?
I thought she had been ineffective. I think if you had lost so many seats in a row and you had no answers to why it occurred and you were trying to do the same thing over and over again and expecting different results, then I think that it was time for some kind of challenge. We ran a very good campaign with Tim Ryan. We were unsuccessful there, but we also were able to put a lot more reforms in to bring some more accountability to leadership.
Why stand with Ryan? What did he bring to the table that you thought would be good for the party and good for Congress?
Well, I think, first of all, challenges are always important. Leadership always needs to be challenged. They need to be reminded that they are there as a representation of the members of Congress. They're not there in and of itself. And number two, I think Ryan was able to really bring a cross-section of America together. He represented the Rust Belt area. He also could really reach out to youth. He's a young member of Congress. Our coalition is a very young coalition also, people that help get elected. And I think that it was time for us to have a new voice, and I thought he would be an appropriate new voice.
Are you concerned that going against leadership and being quite vocal about it will come back to bite you?
No, not really. And look, I am with leadership sometimes and not with leadership sometimes. My job is to be answerable to my constituents, and more importantly, I have to be answerable to the future. I am a young 37. I have to live whatever the consequences are for the next 10, 20 years that are decided by Democratic members of Congress, or the caucus, I should say. And for me to kind of shortchange what's going to happen in the future because I'm afraid of the now, I think would be really me being derelict of my duty. Are
you concerned it might hurt, though, in terms of representing your district and getting things done for the folks you represent?
No, it's certainly not in the next couple of years. Look, what needs to be done in the next couple of years is to protect this country and my district from Donald Trump. He is a severe threat to what understands modern democracy. And anybody that's not willing to join me on that fight, whether Democrat or Republican, they'll have to answer to history.
I want to get to Trump in a second here, more on him, but critics are talking about the Democratic Party, saying it's hard to know right now, and during the campaign it was hard to know what Democrats really stood for. Do they have a point?
No, they don't have a point. That's actually just a media creation. We've always stood for the working class. We're the ones that have been talking about bringing back the days of free or reduced tuition, raising the minimum wage, raising the standards. What we haven't done is actually executed on that. And that's been my biggest complaint. We do talk about it, but we need to actually execute it and actually make people believe, because they see us actually working these policies and actually creating them. We can't just talk about this over and over again. We actually have to execute it now. The way we're going to prove this now is because there's no way that Paul Ryan is not going to be able to help himself. He has been hoping and praying that he can get rid of Medicare so he could kick Granny off Medicare and start his utopian Ayn Rand worldview. Now we're going to have to, I think the American public is going to see why the Democrats are going to be existing, because we're the ones who are going to protect Social Security, Medicare, and also stop them from collapsing our health insurance industry altogether, which they will if they just don't know how to deal with the ACA to begin with.
Is it possible, though, and again, media creation or otherwise, the idea that people don't know what Democrats truly stand for, is it possible, and you're correct, they do know what Democrats stand for, they just don't agree with it?
No, they're wrong. Because, look, at the end of the day, the polling shows that they do agree with the fact that we need higher living wage. They do agree with some of our core tenets when it comes to health care. They do agree that Main Street should be more important than Wall Street. What they don't agree with is the fact that whether we've actually done that, we've actually proven that. And that is the case. There is something to be said, the fact that if we're truly the party that's going to reign in Wall Street, unlike the Republicans, then we should actually truly be reigning in Wall Street and not doing the half measures that we do. And at the end of the day, until we start proving that our actions matches our ideas, we're not going to be able to get the votes. We're not going to be able to inspire people.
Ex-Labor Secretary Robert Reich said that there's a, quote, dark cloud of illegitimacy hanging over the Trump presidency, the pending Trump presidency. You agree with that?
Absolutely. He has lost by the largest margins in terms of the popular vote to still become president. His electoral quote-unquote landslide is not such. It's 47th out of 53 elections of some sort, so it's not even that. He lied his way into this, told everyone what he wanted to hear. Clearly, there was foreign government involvement in his election, something that should be investigated. Someone should be actually checked on to see who on his campaign was arranging for this type of involvement. He actually asked on public TV for the Russians to hack Secretary Clinton's email system. So to say that this man is not legitimate, I think is correct. It's absolutely correct. He is an illegitimate president. He has no mandate, and I feel nothing at all in terms of trying to give him anything.
Should Electoral College members vote against the wishes of their states?
From my understanding, the history of the United States, the Electoral College was specifically set up for these types of situations when you have a radical situation, especially when involving foreign governments involved in elections. Particularly back in the day, they were worried about the Brits. If there is proof, and I think there and solid proof, and it has to be solid proof, that there was direct coordination between the Trump campaign and the Russian government, or somebody in the Trump campaign and the Russian government, then I think the Electoral College members do have a right to make that decision, and I think they should use that decision if we know that there was foreign subversive activity into our election and there was direct coordination between the Trump campaign and Russia to do that.
If they take that option, it throws it into the House of Representatives. You could have a Paul Ryan, you could have a Pence, you could have anyone and their brother running for or campaigning, yes, or at least positioning themselves for this. Anyone but Trump, as far as you're concerned?
No. Anyone but a Putin puppet is what I'm concerned about. This is not a Democrat-Republican issue. This is a national security issue. We have a person who is barely a leader, who is trying to overturn more than 70 years of our policies in Europe, in Western Europe, in terms of our NATO alliances. You have a Secretary of State who has received an award called the Friends of Russia Award, who wants to lift sanctions on a country that has waged war on its neighbors. For us not to look at whether there's foreign involvement or not and say that that's an issue, I think it's extremely dangerous.
We've got about a minute left here. I don't want to ignore your district. Most pressing need for the folks you represent?
I mean, the most pressing need for that my folks still need is continued expansion in terms of transportation. There's a lot of areas of my district that do not have the transportation that they need to go to work, to go to school, to go to the hospitals. They can't afford cars. And so continuing with the expansion of light rail and bus systems is very important for them to get them the immediate need they need, immediate help they need.
All right, very good. Congressman, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
Yeah.
We want to hear from you. Submit your questions, comments, and concerns via email at arizonahorizon@asu.edu.
Each year, roughly, I should say, 3 million children suffer some type of injury playing sports. That's according to the U.S. Consumer Product Safety Commission. Phoenix Children's Hospital has a new state-of-the-art gait lab that's geared toward helping children recover faster and better. Producer Shauna Fisher and photographer Rob McJanet take us inside the lab.
Elise Gifford spends most of her Saturdays on the soccer field. The 13-year-old loves playing with her teammates, but an injury put her on the sidelines.
I just lifted my leg up and I heard a pop and I went down, and then I didn't think anything of it, and my coach came on the field and I couldn't bend it, and it hurt.
At first, Elise wasn't too concerned, and neither was her mom, Lorena.
We didn't really think much of it. It was swollen, but not really. And she could still walk, but not put full pressure. So we just didn't know.
What the Giffords would soon find out is Elise's injury was quite severe, a torn ACL. And if it wasn't treated properly, Elise would be hanging up her cleats for good.
Hey, how's it going?
Dr. Jeffrey Vaughn is an orthopedic surgeon at Phoenix Children's Hospital.
That's good.
And Elise's doctor.
What grade are you in now?
After repairing the tear, he recommended Elise begin intensive therapy at PCH's innovative Gait Lab.
So with the Gait Lab, we're able to monitor patients' motions and their balance with those motions. We're able to test recovery of motion strength or strength in their limbs after surgeries or after an injury to evaluate when they're ready or if they're ready to go back to sports.
All your markers look good.
Most patients begin therapy about 4 months after surgery to stop muscle atrophy and a loss of balance.
Perfect.
And getting those fixed or corrected and knowing they're corrected before they get back to sports, we think is going to help the patient not re-injure their knee or decrease that chance of re-injuring their knee.
Elisa's therapists hook her up to leads that will monitor her movements and feed back information to a computer for analysis. The computer then creates a 3D model of Elisa's movements. Dr. Vaughn says this kind of testing helps pinpoint exactly where the patient needs the most help.
So when they come in now, we can test their quadriceps, their hamstrings, we can test their core muscles as they do certain exercises in the lab, and then using those monitors, we can determine the percentages of balance, of strength, to be able to say, okay, these are the things you need to work on before you get back to sport to prevent those injuries, and to say, yeah, you know what, you are ready. Even though you're 6 months, you might have another month of exercises we need to do with you, or you're 6 months, you're ready to go.
Did you already practice?
Dr. Vaughn says with more and more young people active in competitive sports programs, he's seeing an increase in serious injuries. Studies show as many as 30 million kids in the U.S. between 6 and 17 years old participate in club sports. So the technology at the Gait Lab can make a huge difference.
I think it allows us to give so much better care to the patients and so much better feedback on what they can do to prevent injury. I think it's made a big step in how we care for our patients.
As for Elise, it's been about 8 months since her injury and she's back playing soccer.
Yeah, I'm really not hesitant at all on the field. I just give it my all and everything's fine, so yeah.
And her mom is back on the sidelines cheering her on. Grateful, like only a mom can be.
I learned just her strength and her perseverance, and she teaches me things every day just to be a better person and be grateful and be thankful for everything you have. And if life does give you lemons, you make lemonade, and you just, every day's a new day and you keep pushing forward.
Perfect.
The Gait Lab can also be used to help children with movement disorders like cerebral palsy and multiple sclerosis. Wednesday on Arizona Horizon, remember comedian Yakov Smirnoff? He's had a career shift. He's now helping couples with their relationships. Plus, we'll hear about an effort to help eliminate barriers to voting. That's on the next Arizona Horizon. That is it for now. I'm Ted Simons. Thank you so much for joining us. You have a great evening.
Arizona Horizon is made possible by contributions from the Friends of Arizona PBS, members of your PBS station. Thank you.